The wife of a wealthy family had been repeatedly threatened, and the person behind it even appeared in her bedroom. While she was overwhelmed with fear, her husband was secretly involved in an ambiguous relationship with his female secretary. But when the truth was finally revealed, the darkest side of human nature was exposed. One day, a guest arrived at Kagoro's detective agency, and the visitor was named Kano, the president of an entertainment company. He said that the company was about to sign a contract with Tenma, a Japanese singer who had debuted in France, and they were also preparing to hold a secret celebration party. However, ever since the date of the party was confirmed, strange incidents had started happening around his wife Miwa. The couple often found anonymous bouquets of flowers at their doorstep, and they had also received hundreds of threatening letters. The letters said, "Anyone who ignores my love will go to hell." Since the celebration party was a company secret, apart from the Kano couple, only 4 specially invited guests knew about it. Worried about his wife's safety, Kano wanted to hire Kagoro to attend the party as a friend and secretly investigate the case. 3 days later, Kagoro's family set off on this unknown journey. After traveling hundreds of kilometers, Kagoro's family finally arrived at Kano's mansion, and they were greeted by a beautiful woman. She was Kano's personal secretary, named Masao. At that moment, Kano also came out to welcome them, and under his guidance, everyone was led into the mansion's living room. Kagoro did not want to waste time, so he wanted to immediately inspect the mansion. Just then, Kano's wife Miwa also arrived in the living room. She was the victim of the threatening letters, and she was also the president of the entertainment company. After introducing herself, Miwa suggested that she personally show Kagoro's family around the mansion, but after everyone left the living room, Masao's expression suddenly changed. As she walked up to Kano, and her tone instantly became flattering, and it seemed that the relationship between the two was not ordinary. Soon after, Miwa brought everyone to the study, and Conan was attracted by an armor displayed nearby. Just as he was about to touch it, Kagoro stopped him, and then Miwa took everyone to the bedroom. On the vanity table were wedding photos of her and Kano, representing 10 years of memories and companionship. But at this warm moment, the telephone suddenly rang, and Miwa answered the call, and her face instantly turned pale with fear. She then rushed into Kano's arms in panic, and a moment later, the phone rang again. This time, Kagoro stepped forward to answer it, but the person on the other end immediately hung up. Miwa tremblingly explained that it was a hoarse-voiced man, and whenever someone other than her answered the phone, he would immediately hang up. She then took out a stack of secretly taken photographs, which she had found all of them at the entrance that morning. At that moment, Masao came in and announced that some guests had arrived. The 2 visitors were Michelle, Tenma's manager, and Hideki, Kano's younger brother. Michelle said that Tenma had been delayed by something and would arrive in about half an hour. Kano introduced Kagoro's family to them, saying that they were important guests for the celebration party. Then Michelle looked at his watch and said Tenma should be arriving soon, and after saying that, he and Hideki went downstairs to welcome him. Miwa also said she was going upstairs to touch up her makeup. After everyone left, only Kagoro's family remained in the living room. Suddenly, the lights went out, and immediately afterward, Miwa's scream echoed through the mansion. Kagoro's family quickly rushed toward the bedroom, and when they arrived, they discovered that the door had been locked from the inside. Ran kicked the door open, and inside, a man wearing a black robe was tightly holding Miwa, and then he suddenly jumped out of the window and disappeared into the rainy night. When the lights came back on, the others also rushed over, and Miwa was so frightened that she threw herself into Kano's arms. But the next second, she noticed that a bouquet of flowers had mysteriously appeared on the table, and Conan immediately realized that these were exactly the flowers mentioned in Tenma's lyrics. This meant that someone was threatening Miwa according to the order of the song's lyrics, and the person behind everything seemed to be much closer than they imagined. Kagoro confirmed that the power switch had been turned off and then switched back on. Miwa said that the moment she walked back to her room, the lights went out, and then someone attacked her from behind. Ran recalled what happened at the time and said the attacker was wearing a cloak, and his facial features looked European, but the only European person in the mansion was Tenma's manager, Michelle. Michelle quickly explained that he had been waiting for Tenma on the porch during the incident, and later, when it started raining, he returned inside, and on the way, he happened to run into Hideki. After hearing Miwa's scream, the 2 of them rushed upstairs together. However, before everyone could recover from the shock, a man completely soaked from the rain suddenly appeared at the entrance. Hideki quickly introduced him as tonight's main guest, Tenma, and when Ran saw him, she was immediately shocked because he looked surprisingly similar to the attacker. At that moment, Kagoro told everyone to calm down and suggested they gather in the hall first so he could organize the events and figure out what happened. After everyone left, Conan began organizing the clues from the scene. He walked to the balcony and swept his flashlight across the floor, where he discovered a small fragment left behind. Then he looked up at the railing and found marks that appeared to have been left by fishing line. Everything about this was extremely strange. Back in the living room, Kagoro began questioning everyone's movements during the incident. Hideki said that he was in the bathroom at the time, and Masao claimed that she had been staying in the kitchen the entire time. Then Kano turned to Tenma and asked why he was completely soaked. Tenma explained that the rain was too heavy when he got out of the car, so he was drenched by the time he entered the house. Kano clearly didn't believe him, but Kagoro advised everyone to rest for the time being. Miwa looked exhausted and said she wasn't feeling well, so she wanted to return to her room. Meanwhile, Conan continued investigating the photos taken of Miwa. Unexpectedly, a book fell from the bookshelf, revealing a private photograph that had been deliberately hidden, and the people in the photo were none other than Miwa and Tenma. Just as Conan was staring at the picture, Ran suddenly snatched it away, but unfortunately, this scene was witnessed by Kano. After seeing the photo, Kano's expression immediately turned cold as he took the photo and questioned Tenma about it. At that moment, Miwa stepped forward and explained that she admitted that she and Tenma had indeed dated 10 years ago. Back then, Tenma was only an unknown singer, and she never expected that they would meet again under such circumstances. Kano's expression became even darker, and the atmosphere in the room became unbearably tense. At that moment, Michelle tried to ease the situation by taking out a bottle of French wine. Everyone raised their glasses and forced themselves to smile. While drinking, Kagoro became too excited and accidentally bumped into Miwa, causing the red wine to spill onto her clothes. Miwa smiled and said it was fine. Then she asked Masao to go to the basement and bring out the tea set, while she herself went to the kitchen to prepare a cake. Not long after, Masao returned to the living room carrying the tea set, and she was also holding a flower in her hand, saying she had just found it near the entrance. Ran recognized the flower, and its meaning represented betrayal, which perfectly matched the hidden message behind the threatening letters. At that moment, Miwa also returned while pushing the cake cart. After finishing the cake, Kano took Tenma upstairs with a complicated expression because he suspected that Tenma was the person who attacked Miwa. However, Tenma coldly replied that he wasn't so bored as to do something like that, and their argument gradually became more intense, with their voices even being heard downstairs. Suddenly, a scream came from upstairs, and everyone immediately rushed up to see Kano stepping backward in terror while Tenma was lying in a pool of blood with a sword piercing through his body. At that moment, Conan noticed that Tenma was holding a tuning fork in his hand, and there were 2 clear scratches on it. Just as Conan was about to move closer, Kagoro grabbed him and pulled him away. Kano completely lost control and desperately denied killing anyone, claiming that although he had argued with Tenma moments earlier, Tenma had remained silent the entire time. When Kano tried to sit down somewhere, he suddenly heard the scream, and when he turned around, he saw Tenma lying dead on the floor, but the situation made it difficult for anyone to believe him. At the time of the murder, everyone else was downstairs, and the only person alone with the victim was Kano himself. Hideki immediately accused his brother, saying Kano had a grudge against Tenma, so he must be the murderer, and Masao also added that if Kano got arrested, the company would eventually fall into Miwa's hands. Kagoro asked Kano whether he saw the killer, but Kano only shook his head blankly. At that moment, Conan noticed that the piano lid was open, but earlier that afternoon it had clearly been closed. Soon, the police arrived at the scene, and after inspecting the balcony, Inspector Magyar shook his head because there was a cliff outside, making the possibility of the killer escaping from there almost impossible. At this moment, Conan crouched down and examined the window frame, discovering scratches on the edge of the window that were exactly the same as the marks left when Miwa was attacked. And then he walked over to the location of the body and found that the mark left by the sword tip on the floor was perfectly straight downward, meaning the weapon had fallen vertically from above. Conan slowly looked up at the chandelier as if he had realized something, so he immediately went to the hallway and noticed that the chandelier was positioned much higher than it had been earlier, and there were also scratches on the railing. Following the direction of the marks, he looked toward the bookshelf where he discovered a box without any dust on it, and inside was a piece of sheet music that was Tenma's song, Red Love Dream Sonata. It turned out that this song was a piece Tenma had sent to Miwa 10 years ago. Conan turned back toward the piano and noticed a red liquid stain on it, so he climbed onto the piano and smelled it carefully, discovering that it wasn't blood but red wine. Immediately, Conan rushed downstairs and using Inspector Megur's name, he ordered Officer Kobayashi to search the coastline below the cliff. Since there were no new clues, Inspector Megur had no choice but to take Kano back to the police station for questioning. Just as everyone was preparing to leave, another strange event occurred when a mysterious figure wearing a black cloak suddenly appeared at the entrance, and it was the same person who had attacked Miwa. It turned out that following Conan's instructions, Officer Kobayashi had discovered a Beethoven statue on the shore beneath the cliff. Conan immediately asked everyone to gather on the balcony, where he pointed out the scratches on the railing to Inspector Megur and asked Kagoro to step on the broken pieces of stone scattered on the ground. After that, Conan took out the fishing line and wooden stick that had been attached to the Beethoven statue. Kagoro instantly understood that the scratches on the railing were caused by the fishing line rubbing against it, and that the Beethoven statue had originally been nothing more than a decoration inside the mansion. Then Kagoro personally recreated the entire process of Miwa's staged attack. He attached a heavy object to one end of the fishing line, passed the other end underneath the railing, placed Megur's coat on a dummy, and had Officer Kobayashi act as Miwa. When Kobayashi pulled the fishing line, the heavy object fell, causing the dummy to be suddenly dragged out of the balcony. At that moment, the truth finally came to light. The so-called attack was nothing more than a trap Miwa had created herself. After cutting off the power, she quickly returned to her room and deliberately screamed for help, making everyone believe that she had been attacked. Faced with everyone's questions, Miwa finally admitted that everything had indeed been planned by her. However, the threatening letters she received during that time were real. She had only used the fake attack to make everyone believe that she was truly being targeted. Megur explained that this incident had no direct connection to Tenma's murder, so Kano still had to be taken back to the police station for questioning. Watching the police and everyone else continue to fall deeper into Miwa's trap, Conan finally couldn't stay silent any longer. He shot Kagoro with a tranquilizer dart and used his identity to reveal the truth. Conan asked Megur to examine the marks on the floor. The angle of the wound was perfectly vertical, meaning the weapon had fallen straight down from directly above the victim, combined with the tuning fork found in Tenma's hand. These clues revealed a terrifying trap. The killer only needed to hang the sword from the chandelier. The moment it fell, it would pierce Tenma's body instantly. Megur raised a question. Even if Tenma had happened to stand exactly where the sword fell, it should have struck his head or shoulder, but when he died, his face was facing downward, meaning the position did not make sense. Conan calmly explained that this was exactly what the killer had planned in advance. The killer first knocked over the piano chair and placed the tuning fork on the floor. When Tenma approached the piano and noticed the fallen tuning fork, he naturally bent down to pick it up. At that moment, his back would be directly underneath the sword hanging from the chandelier. The tuning fork was the key to the entire mechanism. The killer first hung the sword from the ceiling, passed it through the chandelier's pulley system, and extended the fishing line along the hallway railing. One end of the fishing line was wrapped several times around the sofa in the living room and attached to the tuning fork. The other end was tied to a heavy object hanging outside the window. When Tenma reached down to pick up the tuning fork trapped under the chair leg, the fishing line was pulled. The heavy object fell, causing the sword hanging from the chandelier to drop instantly and pierce through Tenma's body. The fishing line attached to the sword was then pulled into the ocean by the falling weight, completely erasing the evidence. After this deduction, the identity of the murderer was finally clear. The only person who was familiar with fishing lines and capable of creating such a complicated mechanism was Miwa. That night, after pouring wine for everyone, she used going to the kitchen as an excuse. In reality, she took the opportunity to return to the living room and set up the entire trap. Facing Kagoro's deduction, Miwa remained calm and claimed that everything was merely a detective's speculation without any direct evidence. Conan smiled faintly and said that there was indeed evidence. It was the red liquid on the piano. It was not blood, but the French wine brought by Michel. That night, while Kagoro was enjoying the wine, he accidentally bumped into Miwa, causing the wine to spill onto the flower pinned to her chest. Later, when she opened the piano lid, the wine dripping from the flower fell onto the piano cover, leaving behind this crucial clue. Miwa carefully created the entire scheme by making everyone believe that Tenma was harassing her. Her goal was to provoke Kano and make him appear to be the person with the strongest motive. As for why she wanted to kill Tenma, everything went back to that photograph from 10 years ago. The date the photo was taken was exactly 6 months before Miwa's marriage. In that same year, Tenma wrote the song The Red Love Dream Sonata. On the surface, it was a passionate love song, but the flower meanings hidden in the lyrics carried completely different emotions. Red roses represented love, marigolds represented despair, bellflowers represented malice. and dahlias represented betrayal. The true meaning behind the song was Tenma's resentment and curse toward his former lover. Hearing this, Miwa finally lowered her head and stopped trying to defend herself. With a trembling voice, she revealed what had happened 10 years ago. That day, Tenma asked her to meet him and told her that he wanted to break up. Overwhelmed by anger and despair, she impulsively pushed Tenma off a cliff, believing at the time that he had already died. After that, she quickly married Kano. However, many years later, the Tenma she thought was dead suddenly reappeared. Not only had he become a famous singer, but he was also about to sign a contract with Kano's company. Terrified that the truth would be exposed, Miwa once again chose the path of crime. She personally designed a trap to make Kano take the blame, because she knew that if she was arrested, Masao might take the opportunity to take away her husband and seize control of the company. But if Kano became the one accused, she could protect everything. Just as Miwa was trying to justify her actions, Tenma's manager interrupted her and told everyone that Tenma had already let go of his hatred from the past. He even felt guilty for leaving without saying goodbye back then. Before signing the contract, he had specifically asked to change the lyrics of that song. Except for the red rose, the meanings of the other flowers were changed into hyacinth, laurel, and olive. Hyacinth represented rebirth, laurel symbolized glory, and olive represented peace. Through the language of these three flowers, Tenma was telling her that everything was already in the past,